All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. 起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬：一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬。参加各位点传师一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated. Okay, Bill, I'm gonna go on mute.
All righty. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all here today on this glorious week before Christmas. Hope all of your holiday plans, for those of you who are making them, are going just the way you want. It's a slightly overcast 31-degree day here in Indianapolis. Generally speaking, fairly cold. Not too bad a day to be in Los Angeles. But anyway, here we are. This morning, I want to chat just a bit about a topic that receives an awful lot of talk and may not be entirely all that well understood, and that's the concept of achieving balance in life. It's a topic that we talk about in casual conversation very frequently. It's something that arises in a conversation when we feel that an individual we care about requires a little help. It's extremely common to tell somebody, for instance, that they need to find the balance between work life and home life and things like that. But there's a different perspective from which we can view the finding and achievement of balance in life. And I want to explore that just a bit today because I think it makes some sense and it may actually even be somewhat helpful. The conventional wisdom when we talk about balance in things is that it's symmetrical, that it's equal on both sides of a particular issue or a particular thing, that it kind of resembles a teeter-totter on a playground where there are two essentially equal length seats on a pivot point in the center. It tends to take on the image or appearance of being ultimate justice, right? Where despite whatever happens in life, whatever happens with our relationships, with whatever happens karmically speaking, that at some point we believe the universe will balance itself and that the wrongs will be righted and all the rewards and punishments will be meted out and that sort of thing. And that's a very commonly held belief. We tend to think of balance as kind of the correction of the universe, kind of the correction of heaven and earth. Most of us believe that finding balance in life is essential to one's spiritual growth and refinement. And to a degree, that's absolutely the case. Like I said, from perhaps a somewhat different perspective. And most people tend to view that balance as finding a state of equilibrium between opposites. Is somewhat of a dualistic manner of thinking. And it's easy to see why. It's not a stretch for us in our minds to see, for instance, good and evil as being polar opposites, or creation and destruction being polar opposites. But in point of fact, they're not always polar opposites. And in fact, very often, those things that appear to be at complete different ends of the spectrum really are merely different facets of the same thing. And so we speak of the relationship between opposites. We talk about that all the time. And in fact, it even comes up from time to time in movie dialogue. I kind of enjoy the Chronicles of Riddick. Yeah, it's a kind of a fun science fiction movie and they have an elemental in this movie who speaks of the balance of opposites, the balance of evil being fought by good. However, in these extreme times, they can only talk about evil being fought by a different kind of evil, and therefore giving up the balance of opposites. In that line of thinking, balance becomes almost the recompense of our karmic path. That in the great rebalancing, those who have accrued negative karma will receive their negative reward. We see it as the great equalizer of people here on earth, that somehow that karmic justice is going to reach out into the lives of those who perhaps have not quite been the folks they should have been, and will rebalance and reform the earth. We tend to see it as the restoration of nature and the earth. We talk about the earth returning itself to a balanced state, and absolutely there is no doubt that our planet needs some rebalancing. By the actions of people, we have managed to very radically alter both the face of the planet and the way the planet's natural systems work and interact, to such a point where we might actually cause some fairly catastrophic changes in climate and ecosystems. And so, once again, not without an element of truth. And that's so much the case that most people believe that this conventional view of balance in their lives and in the world and in the universe is an essential truth, that it's a natural law, and that it's immutable. Well, I'd like to challenge that conventional thinking. Kind of the whole reason I brought the topic up. And in point of fact, if we study balance carefully, if we look at it analytically, we find out that real, true, equal balance is an extremely rare commodity in the universe. Okay? For instance, I mentioned creation and destruction, two things in which we are always engaged in some way or another. Creation always takes much longer and involves much more effort than destruction does. It takes no thought at all to burn down a house or to break something or destroy something, but it takes a great deal of discipline and a lot of work typically to create something. Building the house takes months, burning it down takes minutes. The universe even does not exist in a balanced state, as it were. The universe is perhaps 2 to 7% observable matter and roughly 92 to 95% dark matter, a substance that 25 years ago was completely unknown. And even now, its legitimate existence is based upon the theory of universal expansion, where science thinks that without its presence, the universe by now should be shrinking. But it isn't. It's still expanding. Okay? There is a tremendous inequality there, that the observable universe, the matter, the stuff we can see and touch, the stuff we can look at, really only comprises a very small portion of the universe as it truly exists. In nature, there is very little true balance. There's I can't think of a single example of absolute equality. Today is the 21st of December, the winter solstice here in the northern hemisphere. It's the shortest day of the year for us. And if it were truly equal, then the shortest day of the year and the longest day of the year would balance out probably somewhere around 12 hours each, but that isn't what happens. And in fact, as time goes by during the year, the Earth in its rotation around the sun, in its orbit, tends to catch up with itself as the days elongate and lag behind itself as the days become shorter. And that's because of the tilt of the Earth on its axis and the distance from the sun to the North Pole. But the truth is, even there, where one would think that there might be some kind of equality, some kind of balance at the solstices where we ought to have perhaps 12 hours on either side, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. Okay, closer to the Earth, it takes 9 months to create a baby, but it takes mere moments to die. Yin and yang are not perfectly and symmetrically balanced. They're not. Each contains a little bit of the other, and for each one of us that lives on this earth, we are predominantly either yin or yang, depending upon our nature, our gender, our environment, our upbringing, a whole variety of circumstances. That's not an accident. That's nature at work once again. And so, while one might look at me as an essentially yang creature because I was born male and tend to exemplify a number of those guy mentalities and behaviors that drive women crazy, which makes some folks wonder how I ever managed to get married, but that's a whole nother discussion. There is within me a very healthy dose of yin, and I'm quite in touch with that and very comfortable and happy with it. It is not the preponderance of my being, but without it I could not be the person I am now. What this tells me is that attempting to achieve pure equilibrium, complete and total equal balance in life, probably is an extremist view and not likely to happen. Once again, we talk about the balance between work life and our home life, between our secular life and our spiritual life. Once again, between what we create and what we destroy. And in all three of those things, there's no balance in the commitment of time. There's no balance in the commitment of activities. There's no equilibrium to be found in terms of the number of tasks, the number of hours, the amount of thought required to achieve our accomplishments or anything else. Those are all things that take place as they need to, according to our beliefs and values and thoughts and our growth and refinement in our spiritual path and a number of other things. And so while we tell people that they need to find that balance, telling them how to find it becomes very difficult. In the original publication of the Etiquette and Disciplines, there's a paragraph that speaks to this, that says, one must make time to honor and take care of one's spiritual obligations, that the time required to fulfill those obligations is typically much less than the time required to fulfill one's secular obligations, but that commitment of time and that commitment to those responsibilities is no less important. And that's the truth. In anything of any importance to us, finding balance really doesn't have anything to do with establishing equilibrium, but rather with making sure that all of the responsibilities and all of the obligations are tended to correctly, appropriately, and properly, irregardless of the commitment of time or the number of tasks involved. We're taught from our earliest childhood to find balance in all of these activities. And we have a number of terms for folks who can't or won't do that. We've all seen folks that we've dubbed workaholics before. People for whom the 18-hour workday is the norm and not the exception. And I suppose, anybody could be caught up in that particular trap. Heaven knows if I allowed it to occur, I could work 24 hours a day, 8 days a week, and nobody at Simon would argue too terribly much about that, perhaps with the exception of my boss, who also has an equally framed focus on family life versus work life. But for a lot of folks where I work, being a workaholic is a badge of honor. It's a fast track to being noticed and being promoted and all sorts of things. I'm in my late 50s now, and quite frankly, my focus has changed a great deal from trying to climb a corporate ladder somewhere to wanting to enjoy the time that I have with my friends and my family and my spirituality, and to refine and improve the things that help other people and not just the things that help me per se. I find that the things I'm able to do for others always winds up helping me just the same. So what really qualifies as balance in life? Well, let's see if we can answer that here. My opinion only, and please feel free to accept or reject whatever I'm about to tell you. But I'm going to tell you right now that I believe that moderation is the key to real balance. I think it is a futile search and a waste of effort and energy to try to achieve balance of any real and lasting, enduring type without understanding moderation and holding to the center path. Moderation dictates avoiding the extremes in life. Moderation doesn't necessarily tell us where the extremes are or where the middle point is. But as we begin to understand extreme behaviors in the light of the Tao of moderation, we can learn to get much closer to the middle than the ends. We can begin to see the pivot point in the center of the teeter-totter, if you will, and to begin to examine things more along the lines of Derek's examples in the Tao of humility, where instead of having humility on one end and arrogance on the other, we rather have the mindsets and thought patterns that exemplify those behaviors, and humility in the middle. Okay? Moderation tends to help us to eliminate the extremes. It works in the absence of extremes, where we are seeking not only to do what we need to do, but do what we want to do, and not have a life of one crisis to the next or one extreme to the next. It's that philosophical point, that holding on to that center path, that holding on to the Tao teachings, that creates that essential balance in life. Without knowing that, without understanding that, without being able to moderate our desires, our attachments, our activities, our consumption, a whole variety of things, then we are going to be essentially driven by the ego and our extremes. And see, moderation isn't concerned necessarily with equality in finding balance, not with numerical equality anyway, and perhaps not with equality at all. It's not rigid. It's not a fixed and inflexible point somewhere that says this is where you have to remain. It's a guideline for each person to find that center path in their own life. It allows for all possibilities and any possibilities. based on what the individual thinks is important and believes. And it doesn't require force or effort. Trying to achieve moderation through force or coercion is an exercise in futility as well. Because when one attempts to use force or coercion, one is using an extreme behavior in its very nature. And so because it doesn't require force or tremendous effort, it can create balance where balance didn't previously exist. For us, moderation is the image, the absolute essence of unattached actions and moderated desires. It is the outward appearance of a moderate life. It is the indicator of one who walks the center path. So, as I thought about this, and I do this every week, I thought, gee, what would I want for everybody to take away from this, given the opportunity? And I think the points here are probably what I thought, at least for me, were among the more important. I try to remember that balance in life can't be achieved by force or by coercion. It can't be contrived. It can't be manipulated into existence, and it can't really be faked or contrived for very long. It's very, very difficult to create the appearance of balance while living an extremist lifestyle. And it's very difficult to do. I try to remember that balance in life has nothing to do with the equality of things or the equality of time, but rather with moderation in all things. And that the closer I get to that center path, the more able I am to walk that path of a moderate life, then the better my balance in life generally is in everything that I do. I think that balance depends on not viewing things in terms of polar opposition or diametrically opposed objects. I think trying to find the complementary pairs and the center ground amongst extremes is a much more productive pursuit. Although it's not always obvious, we always have the ability to request assistance and help from Derek and the ordained masters and our Tao brothers and sisters who perhaps might have walked this path before and might know it a little better than we do. And we can always test the waters ourselves by taking time every now and again as we're walking down that path to think, gee, am I a little right of center, a little left of center, or am I doing okay? Or perhaps am I way to the right or left of center, and maybe I need to stop and reevaluate where we're going. And that's why I say that moderation is the key to establishing balance in life. And I try to keep that in mind. Like everybody else on this planet, I don't always get to the end goal every time. But given enough practice, enough time, and enough episodes of falling down, eventually I get there. I don't know that it's appreciably different for anyone else. So kind of tie it up here, as with so many things, there are many, many misconceptions about what it really means to be balanced and about achieving balance in life. And I'm kind of hoping in this brief half an hour maybe to have helped that out just a bit. The processes of creation and destruction and nature and the Tao, those things demonstrate fairly clearly that true equilibrium, that true equal balance in anything is an incredibly rare commodity to see. And so perhaps it would be better for us to not distract our minds with attempting to to find that true equilibrium, and rather to stay in the center path. And so if we would truly achieve balance in life, perhaps first we need to learn moderation. We need to learn how to supplant our desires and our attachments and our illusions to a bit of reason and a lot of moderation, staying to that center path and avoiding the extremes of living. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you a whole bunch. I truly do enjoy this each Sunday, and I hope that what we've said here today might be a bit useful for someone. Thank you.
Bill, thank you very much. Bill, we do have a couple of newcomers today, so they have no idea who you are. So let me just take a moment to explain that Bill Bunting lives in Indiana and has been a lifelong practitioner of martial arts, what he calls martial science, has taught those techniques, those martial arts, martial science techniques to people, including Qigong and Tai Chi, and he has always been looking for an authentic path to follow philosophically, just as he has followed physically. So that's the reason why he has identified with this particular tradition. And now every Sunday we connect through the internet and we present these talks to essentially a global audience. At the moment, we have a whole bunch of people from all different parts of the world. We usually have people from both North America and Central and South America, as well as Europe, Africa, Asia, etc. For the people who are present, I'll just show you guys what the list of attendees looks like. So there they are, people joining with us today from all over the world. And so Bill, I have a whole bunch of remarks to relate to you. So the first remark is that the yin to the respective yang is not always apparent. So in other words, it could be something that you have to look a little bit deeper to find, and also vice versa. That yang to the yin may not always be apparent. And,
very true.
And also, a fun and interesting question for you. What if you always take the center path? Would you be extreme? Would you be considered extreme in always taking the path of moderation? Does taking the middle road suggest that compromise is always preferable in sticking to principle? Key word there being always. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, for me, that's absolutely the case. Particularly if compromise involves a conflict somewhere. If I can find a solution that doesn't require me to exercise any kind of an extreme behavior, if everybody walks away and nobody's hurt, and everybody feels like they got a win out of it, that kind of compromise I can live with. And as far as sticking to principles go, that actually is one of the hallmarks of a committed Tao cultivator. And it's one of the things that makes integrity possible. There are some boundaries in my life I just flat won't cross. There are some things I will not do. And there are some things that I do my very best always to do. And unless something really catastrophic interferes with them, those things are for me anyway, the keystones of my Tao cultivation and my Tao studies. And I figure if I can't maintain those disciplines, then my spirituality needs some work. There aren't a lot of absolutes in the Tao philosophy, but there are some. And for me anyway, honesty, integrity, vegetarianism, the Sunday Tao study groups, trying to walk the path every day to the best of my ability, those things are absolutes.